We take our freshly washed apple. We had to wash ours since they came off of our tree. They had bird poop all over them. We are just going to cut them into quarters. And then we come over to the stove top, and then we just put them into water. It's not quite boiling yet. That's okay, it will be soon. It's still hot from all the other batches of me doing them. This is my last batch. And then just make sure they're all in there, which they are. And then once this comes to a boil, we are going to boil it for 15 to 20 minutes just until they are soft. This one is done, so you can see the color difference. And then I just take a strainer to get the apples out. Just let it drip for the most part so I don't get my floor super dirty. And then we dump them into our Victorio is the brand, and it is a food strainer. So I can get you the shot. So we have our hopper that we just put the apples into, and there's just, you know, the hole that it feeds through. We have the crank mechanism, it's all by hand. On the inside of this mesh tubing is a spiral, so as you crank it, it pushes through the apples and it pops out the flesh of the apples, and then it just runs down into your container, whatever you've got to catch it all. And then it just feeds out the other side, what is left, which is going to be the skins, your stems, blossom ends, and the seeds. Help get it down there just a little bit. It really does do the work for you really well. You just get a nice little arm workout. So as we spin it, you see it comes that's just what I will keep doing until we're done. So I grew up making applesauce every fall time with my mom and my siblings. And this is how we've always made it. And so this is my first time making it on my own. And it's been a few years since I have made applesauce. But it's kind of like riding like a bike because I've been doing it most of my childhood and teenage years growing up, that I didn't stress too much about it because it's already engraved into me on how it works, and I'm grateful for it now. Growing up, I might have not been as grateful for it, but I love being able to make really yummy applesauce and other things for my family that I grew up making and eating. When we moved here, there were already some apple trees on the property, but they had been neglected for quite a few years. And so it was this spring, early spring, we trimmed them up a ton, because boy did they need it. Simply watered them. I didn't do any fertilizer because we have our chickens right in between where our two trees are, and so I didn't want to cause any harm to them. But with having our chickens right there, they kind of did get fertilized, because the manure that they produce around the trees, whenever we watered it or it rained, it trickled down into the soil, so it did technically still get some nice natural fertilizer. So now that we have that all cleaned up, this is something that I learned from my mom, and she learned from her dad, so my grandfather, is to run your skins through one more time, because there's still, you can see that there's still some flesh left on there, and that's why I scraped it all down, so that you can see just how much more we're gonna get by running these through just one more time. And you'll be amazed at how much more you get off of it. And then our skins and what's left, it's not going to waste. It is going to go out to the chickens and to our pig, and it's going to get eaten up, and then we'll get benefits in meat and eggs. So nothing goes to waste. But do you see already how much is coming out? Now I got all of the applesauce into my big stock pot. We are just warming it back up, and then we're going to season it to how we like it. I have tasted it, and it's pretty sweet, not like too sweet. I think it's like perfectly sweet. I don't have to add any sugar. I believe the apple tree is a Honeycrisp, and so they're pretty sweet on their own. So what I pretty much all I'm going to be adding, just some cinnamon and nutmeg, and this is just going to be to taste. I think it's going to be maybe around 2 tablespoons, could be more, maybe around a teaspoon. I have pulled out just 2 little pint jars worth without putting any cinnamon in it. So when I start feeding Adeline solids, I can just feed her just plain old applesauce, so without anything added in. Alright, so cinnamon, the 2 tablespoons.
I want to do it.
And a teaspoon of nutmeg. What, bud?
I want to do it.
Okay. And I'll just get it stirred on in. So I ended up adding in 2 more tablespoons of cinnamon and then 2 more teaspoons of nutmeg. So in total, 1/4 cup of cinnamon and a tablespoon of nutmeg. And I also added in the remaining liquid that I saved when we were cooking the apples to process them. So the basically apple cider. I added in about probably a half gallon, so 2 quarts worth, to thin it out to the right consistency that I wanted it. So now I'm just going to ladle this hot applesauce into our sterile warm jars, and then we will go on with the process of canning them. So when we fill up our jars, we want to leave an inch spacing from the top of the applesauce to the lid. And then we also want to make sure we get as many of the air bubbles all out. So that's why I did a little shaking.